Dear attendees of the World Week, dear friends and colleagues, dear ladies and gentlemen, my name is Åsa Wallin and I will be hosting today's session, Integrated Water and Energy Provision for Healthcare Facilities and Schools. And today we will be discussing the integration of water and energy and service delivery to utilities that have historically been managed separately. However, due to reduced costs and other enabling factors that we will be discussing, our panelists believe there is an opportunity to combine these utilities to provide a more cost-effective and reliable micro-utility and provide more and longer-lasting services to rural communities. And with us here today, we have Jordan Smoke, Senior Director of WASH for World Vision, Anis Sakrani, Senior Partnership Development Manager for Grundfos Holding, and unfortunately, Abraham Asmer, Regional Director, Head of Ethiopia Office for the Children's Investment Foundation, could not make it today. So I have a starting question for you. Could you just give me a minute as an introduction to today's subject and what your role is in this? Jordan.
Sure. Thank you, Åsa. So I work for World Vision. World Vision is a international NGO. We're a multi-sectoral organization working in water, sanitation, hygiene, but also health, education, child protection, and food security as well. On the water side, we have been implementing WASH and water systems for a number of years. We implemented it in over 40 different countries. And what we have seen over the past 5 years or so is dramatic increase to piped water systems and more complex systems and trying to get water closer to people's homes in higher volumes at a higher level of quality of that water. And it requires an additional and larger power needs in order to do that as well. So as we're incorporating more power aspects into our water systems, what we want to look at is how can we start to blend the two together? How can we get the power and the energy sector talking more with the water sector to create the efficiencies that you mentioned at the beginning? So we're an organization who's out there working with communities, working with governments, working with local stakeholders to help provide and support literally thousands of water systems each year across the world, and more buying and looking at and incorporating power needs, and how can we extend that and take that further?
Thank you, Jordan. And Anis, could you also give us a little bit of background, what your point of view is in this?
Thanks, Åsa. So I work for Grundfos, which is one of the world's largest pump manufacturers. And within Grundfos, I work for a strategic business unit that's called Safe Water. And Safe Water has, if you ask me, the toughest market to reach, because we're effectively trying to reach the underserved. And as we know that the underserved around the world have the additional complication of actually not being able to afford the services that they need. So we work very closely with partners like World Vision to understand how can we reach scale and how can we bring water access using sustainable business models. And that's why it's actually very key to think of rural communities as a community, as a holistic system, rather than thinking of a single service that we want to offer to that community. And that's particularly because of the size, the typical size of those communities as well. So it's really linked to the cost effectiveness you were referring to earlier.
Mm-hmm. And Jordan, could you give us an overview of the water plus energy idea and why we're here to discuss this today?
Yeah, so as I think we're both kind of, we've all been speaking from already, this idea of integration and hopefully finding some efficiencies in that. The water takes a tremendous amount of power in order to lift it out of the ground. And in some cases, we've looked at, particularly in institutions, at schools and healthcare facilities, the power needs for water can often be anywhere between 30% to 70% of the total power needs for that particular institution. So if you're already needing so much power just to draw water out of the ground and supply it across that institution, can we find efficiencies then in adding on additional solar panels or different ways to capture that energy to meet the additional ongoing power needs in those particular institutions. So so right now, World Vision, we are working on a few different projects. There is interest in this. There is an openness to explore an integrated micro utility where there would be efficiencies over operation and maintenance as well as costs, and as well as then being able to provide a better service to the people receiving those the power and water. So I think just what Anis was saying in terms of where we're working as well, a lot of times in these rural, more fragile types of contexts, there isn't on-grid type of servicing, and so having off-grid micro utilities is and being able to then combine that and combine services together, hopefully create a more sustainable system and service being provided.
Mm-hmm. Anis, why is Grundfos concerned with this topic, and how might this align with your goals as an organization?
So Grundfos is a foundation-owned company, and we have a very strong history and a set of values that really revolve around doing good while we're doing business. And so as an organization, we've set some really tough goals. Could
you tell us about these goals?
So we have targeted ourselves with reaching 300 million people with clean drinking water by 2030 through our partners, of course, in support of the work that they do. And so if we want to achieve that kind of scale, which we need to if we're going to reach the SDG 6 goals that have been set, then we need to really be thinking about how can we do that innovatively, and how can we test new approaches so that there is some kind of momentum in terms of the scale that we can reach.
And are you hopeful you will reach these goals?
We are working very hard at it, and it's not without its struggles. But I think that's why we have to work in partnership, because we can't do it alone.
Great. Jordan, why is there a possibility right now of integrating water and energy? What are the enabling factors that exist now and maybe didn't exist 5-10 years ago?
Yeah, no, I think that's an important question to address here. One, I think, as I said at the beginning, we're seeing more complexity in water systems being needed out there, and therefore there are additional requirements that come with that. At the same time, as well, when we're talking about power needs as well, we see a growing enabling environment around that. So you're seeing, one, cost coming down because of competitiveness being created through additional demand being created, but you're also seeing then services, regulatory services, as well as operation, technical services being increased at country levels as well. So the capacity is growing. I think the technology is increasing and becoming more cost effective, and the demand is growing as well. And because of those three things coming together, I think we see an opportunity now that we didn't see certainly 5-10 years ago.
Do you want to add something on this, Anis? Do you agree, or what's your take on this?
So I think from my perspective, in my former role, I was in the rural electrification space. And so I think the issues actually for energy and water are very similar. The biggest difference being, of course, when you talk about solar power, where it's not so hard to get access to the sun as it is to actually get access to the water. But I think what is an opportunity here is really to learn from each other. And I have to say that I don't think the engineers in each respective sector are talking to each other at the moment. So I think it's a fantastic initiative on World Vision's part to actually bring that together consciously and say, can we plan together?
And what are these challenges? How will you get them to talk to each other?
Yeah, well, maybe we should be asking.
Jordan, what's your solution?
Yeah, I mean, well, you have different regulatory bodies, right? So, I mean, that's part of the issue there is you have energy power people in government and in private sector that are, doing things and coming up with their own policies and processes one way, and then under water as well, you have different entities and regulatory bodies, and so getting them to talk together is one of the bigger challenges there, and that's why we see more of an opportunity to do that initially in institutions, in healthcare facilities, and in schools, because of it's even slightly more of a kind of a micro area, even outside of the larger community. And so if we can support those structures and institutions in talking about water and energy together, then hopefully that can expand from there.
Anis, some of these benefits seem obvious, but there are other concerns with this approach. Do you see other concerns that you think also should be mentioned?
Yeah, so I think kind of building on the fact that we need to learn from each other, there's been a lot of focus in the energy space around ensuring that actually you have off-takers for your service. So there is a model called the Anchor Business Community Model, the ABC model, where when you're designing these systems, you're really very deliberately thinking about who is going to be the off-taker of these services, and that really is a key to success. So ensuring that you have an anchor, which is a more intensive user of whether it's the electricity or the water or both. It could be some kind of productive use of the water, such as irrigation. Then you have the smaller businesses that may be using both services, and then of course you have the households and the community itself that may be using it.
Do you want to add something to this, Jordan?
Yeah, I mean, I think the offtake and how both water and power can both combine and utilize each other, leveraging each other for just additional better services. Again, finding those offtakes for both of those so that there is additional revenue streams and therefore a greater means of sustainability for both utilities, I think is one of the bigger advantages of trying to combine both together. When we look at healthcare facilities and schools, you could think of the immediate types of power needs, but those power needs and water needs can both extend to teachers' housing or doctor nurses' housing as well that are in those, and that allows for even a better quality of teacher, a better quality of doctor or nurses who now want to come and practice in those particular institutions. So those utilities meeting the needs of the institution, but also helping to increase better services that those institutions are supposed to be providing students or patients as well.
And if I just could add to that, I mean, that's a really interesting point, Jordan, because what that allows you to do by having these different customer groups is also to have different tariffs. So you can actually then offer potentially lower tariffs to the health clinics and the schools by having slightly higher tariffs for those that are using it for income generation. Mm-hmm. So you can adjust your tariff model to really the potential to pay for the services.
And could you both give an example of a project where you've seen opportunity for this integrated delivery model?
Yeah, so I think there are very few examples out there, and that's why we're here kind of starting these discussions now. There is interest, as I've said, World Vision, we have opportunity with a couple different projects, different types of funders behind it, looking at this. One is in Ethiopia, one in Zambia, one in Sierra Leone right now. So there is interest behind it, but there's not a lot of great examples. And so we're trying to find those examples out there to learn off of, and oftentimes it's learning from either a microgrid type of project or learning from a water project and then trying to combine them together. But I think Anis, I mean, there are some examples out there. There's just really not that many to truly learn from.
What's your take on this, Anis?
So there are examples, and I think you can see that, for example, mini-grid developers will be looking at combining their mini-grid with ice making for fishing in local communities. Some are actually producing drinking water. And I think actually I've visited a practical action, and they're here today in Malawi. They have a mini-grid in Malawi where they're actually producing water for irrigation using the solar mini-grid. But it isn't truly integrated. So a little bit further up the hill, there was a Grundfos Foundation water system that wasn't really linked to the actual mini-grid. So you can see how there's a recognition of the need for all services. And that included the schools and health clinic. But actually the water wasn't totally integrated into the whole concept. So there's a huge scope to do it better.
And for those listening today, what would be your message, Jordan?
Yeah, so I would say we're interested in talking to more people about this, finding more partners, finding more people that are interested in this. We'd love to learn more and hear what's going on out there. And yeah, getting government bodies as well as implementers starting talking together at the ground level where work is happening as well. So we see opportunity in this first and foremost to provide better services, benefits to people that need it, but we also see opportunities for funders and financing to come in along with it as well. So I think the opportunities are there, but we still need more data, we still need more trials, and so we're looking for those things to happen. So hopefully there's excitement in this area, and we would love to see more people working towards this as well.
And Anise, what would you say to those listening today?
So I think it's, if you do the maths, then it is more cost effective to consider both systems, especially because actually the same communities will be paying a lot of money for electricity services. So if they can get access to improved services on both fronts, on both energy and water, at a more reasonable cost, it's kind of a no-brainer, right? So I think we just need to make a conscious effort to integrate that thinking in how we design new systems.
If we meet here again in maybe 1 or 2 years, what would you hope to achieve?
Yeah, give us a couple years. I'd love to see some of these projects being rolled out and some of the learnings on them. And again, there's a lot of talk at first to try to figure out mechanisms and building up the servicing of these, but I'd love to be able to come here and be able to talk about an integrated utility type of model that generates a more sustainable utility services of both power and water for people, and be able to share that and see what does that mean now for the financing side of things. What does that mean more for system strengthening side of things, and how does that change the environment that we're working in?
And for you, Anise, the same question. What would you say if we meet in 3 or 5 years? What has happened?
Well, I'm happy you gave me a bit of a longer time frame. So I think initially, of course, it's that we need to learn from each other, because I think let's leapfrog. Let's not go through the process of individually having to try and learn those lessons of how to do energy and water services well. And I think, like Jordan, I think we need to demonstrate how this can work and demonstrate a model that others can take up and just run with it, because we need to achieve that scale.
Thank you. And my last question, Jordan, what's next?
Yeah, so I would say we want to continue some of this discussion. There at the University of North Carolina Global and Water Health Conference in October, we'll be discussing more of it then. Hopefully we'll have some webinars as well. We'll be continuing talking with our partners at SIF, at Grundfos, other places as well. So I would just say let's continue some of these discussions right now, and as we start implementing and finding funders to come alongside, let's work to ensure we're not making similar mistakes ongoing, but learning from them. Is
there anything you want to add, Anise?
No, I think you've said it all, Jordan.
Great,
I'm looking forward to it.
Well, thank you so much for these interesting insights.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.